Back on the 69 today. In the video, we're going to be showing installation of a one-piece floor pan, which you can see I have it setting in place. I'm going to show you once I set it in like it is. I'm going to crawl under it with the creeper, mark all the points with a Sharpie, which I'll go under there with the camera, show what I'm marking and why I'm marking those spots, and then I'll set up the camera here and show pulling it out so you can see exactly how I get it in and out of the car. And then I'll make all my holes in it that I'm going to weld shut, prep those holes, get it back in the car, set it down in place, and it'll be just welding it from there. So I'll just show you some of that's involved in doing one of these one-piece floors. If you already have all your floor cut out, which you can see in the last videos of the steps that it was cutting out the floor pan. So let's see what's next on this floor pan. Alright, so just to start out, I could show what it looks like sitting in place. I did the toe boards yesterday, and then did some running around. So back on it today, I set the floor pan just down in place, and I just clamped it tight. 2 spots on both sides, just so it draws it down a little bit to get it closer to the metal that it's meeting, so I can then Sharpie the marks on the bottom side. So let's try and crawl under there. Okay, so this is going to be tough to show, but basically you're seeing where the floor pan is meeting all the points that it's going to. Transmission cross member the whole way across. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a Sharpie and running it down all those spots there, the whole way to the end, over to the floor support, up. Then I'll go along where it meets the firewall, the whole way across, repeating that to the other side. And we'll just go back to the rear rails. And you can see on the back side of that transmission cross member, you got to go along the floor support here and mark down there so you know where you need to make your holes for that to attach. But the same thing's going to be on the rear rails. I would take my Sharpie, run it down along that frame rail, making a mark on the pan. So when you pull out the pan, I'll show you in a little bit what it looks like once I have the pan out and I flip it over. You'll be able to see that Sharpie mark, knowing where that floor pan's going to sit on that frame rail, so you know where, because I drill some holes in this floor pan and then I'll weld it all along those lines that I just made. So you can see, take the Sharpie and I'll go along that. Back in the back pocket here, I'll be marking down that along the rail where it meets the transition pan, across the floor pan there where it meets the transition pan, and once I have all those marked out, I will pull the pan back out, which I'll show you, and start making some holes. So we got the floor pan out, and just to show you what I was just doing underneath the car, and you can see the Sharpie marks that I just made from following all the original metal that the pan's going to attach to. So along here would be the firewall. In this gap here, this in between is nothing. This is firewall. This here would be the transmission cross member, which you just got to look at the pieces on the car to know how wide that flap is on the transmission cross member. It's about like 3/4 or an inch. So I just go, you go over an 1/8 inch, because that's just along the outside edge. You don't want your hole that you make to be exposed, so draw it in a little bit, and then that's where I'm going to be placing my holes the whole way across, and I spread them out about what factory would be, and then on here I'll do two of them because this new floor support in this kit is just one solid steel beam. Originally there was flaps on each side that you would weld to, and the center was hollow on the original floor support. So here it's flat on the top of the new floor support, so I'm going to run two holes side by side on the outside edges every couple inches the whole way back. And these I dented upward for now because it is a flat floor support in there now. Those are recessed down so it was holding the pan up. So I hammer and dollied that and then dove it upward, so once I get it in, I can press that flat against, and then I'll just fill that with a weld on both sides. But put holes across everywhere, double that way on both sides going down for the cross member. Coming back, you can see where the rear rails are going to ride the whole way down. And then this one's a straight line the whole way back. This is where it gets a little tricky. If you measure your distance in between on the original rails, you'll know where not to make the holes. But just always go off that marker line, come right in from that, and put some holes in here. This is the top of the rail. That's one flat piece on the car, so you can put, you can double stack your holes there. You'll need some holes on that flap there. This is going to meet the wheelhouse, so that just gets cleaned up so the weld can go on that. And then the transition pan the whole way across to the other side, meeting the other rail. And there's pretty much nothing in the center, so it's just all that outside edges. So next I'm going to show you what I use to put the holes in the pan to do it quickly. Usually I use the plasma cutter, but I don't feel like smelling what fumes that puts off this morning, so I'm going to do it the cleaner ways, just so I can keep the doors closed. It's cold out, and just make some holes in it. And that leads me to showing which is my favorite tool, which you'll see in a second why it's my favorite tool. It's a hole puncher, so I'll hook that up and I'll show you what holes I can do. Any outside edge holes I can do with that hole puncher, and it just blows right through it. It's awesome if you're doing stuff like this, full quarter panels, because on the quarter panels, almost all the holes are going on the outside edges. So I can do a quarter panel literally in under a minute, instead of using a drill, which will take you a long time. As you can tell, there's a whole bunch of holes. Usually I use a plasma cutter in this section because you can't get the hole puncher in there. So I'll just take the plasma cutter and just make holes in it. Would do it in a couple seconds, but I'm just going to use a drill to keep it clean in here, to keep down the dust and smell for the morning. So let's hook up that hole puncher and we'll see how that works. I'll show you guys that. Okay, so just to show why this is my favorite tool, I'm going to take it, punch the holes on the back line the whole way across where it's going across the transition pan, just to show you how quick it actually puts these holes in it. So let's punch them out real quick. Now, just so you can see those holes that I just did, I just did this whole line here, aside from the hump, because that's the one downfall. It can't do that lip. It needs to be on a straight edge like this is. But there's only about 5 of them that I'd have to put in there with the drill. But I mean, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 on each side. That's 14 holes in a matter of seconds. And that's putting a 5/16 hole in it, which is plenty to fill with the welder. So that's why that's my favorite tool. So here's what the tool is. It's a Blue Point. I got it from the Snap-on guy. I've had this for probably 8 years. I had to have it fixed once. I believe that the head snapped off of it. You don't want to do any thicker steel than what like this floor pan is, which I don't know what gauge steel that is off the top of my head. But if you do any thicker, it won't punch through it, and that's how it'll break. I was doing a little bit too thick of stuff just because it was convenient to use this, and it snapped on me. So now I just use it on only panels that I know I can use it on. The floor pans, quarter panels, just regular patch panels that I'm making. But again, Blue Point, it's got also another punch on the other side for, I believe it's 1/8 inch holes. Might be a little bit bigger. Let me see if it says anything on there. Don't say, but I believe that that top one, it might be just over 1/8. But the big hole there is 5/16, and it goes in. You just, let's see here, butt it up until it stops on the jaws there. Press the trigger, hold it down, and it just compresses the cylinder in there. That punch drives the punch up through it. And the whole floor pan's prepped now. Every hole that I punched into it, I ground the paint away just to make it so it welds clean. And you can see on the top side, those are dollied out so it sits flush on the top of the new floor supports, whole way back. And on this side lip, I just clean the top lip there and I weld it right to the inner rocker. But it's ready to go in, so I'm going to set the camera up across from where I'm going to set it in, just to show you everyone exactly how you fit one of these floor pans in, because it is big and you got that opening, which is where it's going to go through. And that's how it goes in. You turn it at an angle, it fits up into that window pocket, and dip the front end down, stick it past through the other side, and then once it's all inside, you can turn it, shift it, and drop it down in place. But you can see everything fits really well on these one-piece floors here. Now the next step is I'll take some self-tappers, I like to do it that way, and some vice grips, clamp down to all the brackets, and I'll screw the whole thing down in place so it's tight before I start welding anything. So that'll be my next step. Screw it down, get everything drawn tight, and then I'll start welding all these holes shut. That's going to pretty much do it for today's video. Floor pan's in. I'm just going to work on screwing it down, getting it tight in place, and then start welding on it. Another thing that helps out with one of these jobs, one of these stands here, the hump for the transmission on that floor pan sits right in there. When it's upside down, it holds it in place real nice. Highly recommend getting one of those if you don't have one. It makes it nice for putting any panel on there to start prepping it. And that's a Harbor Freight one. They're only a couple bucks to make life a lot easier. You don't have to work on the ground or leaning it up against the wall or whatever. But hopefully this video was helpful if you're doing a floor pan job. I appreciate you guys watching it. Stay tuned for the next video. Give this one a thumbs up if you liked it, and we'll see you in the next one.